Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at EDHEC, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have today with us Dominique. But Dominique, before we take off, are you prepared to engage?
I'm prepared to engage. Engagement is my job, actually.
It's your trade, right? Let's do this because we have today with us Dominique Mangiatordi, and I hope I pronounced that kind of decently.
Perfectly.
Perfect. He is the CEO and founder of OPP, which is a gamification studio based in Belgium, and is working for clients like Toyota, the International Olympic Committee, Aéroports de Paris. My French is not great. And also Altran, Ogilvy. We actually had Dan Bennett recently, so I should be able to pronounce that not too terribly. ING, Calvin Klein, L'Oreal, so many more. And his team has also launched several successful gamified business apps like Pick Me Up, Business Royale, or Hunterz. And he teaches gamification at Solvay Vietnam, EDHEC Paris, and HEC Liège. So Dominique, is there anything that we're missing from that intro?
Yeah, a lot of things, but I think you get what you can say to your audience.
Paints a good picture, right?
Yeah.
Dominique, we always like to start by understanding our guests a little bit further, a little bit beyond the intro. So we would like to know what does a regular day, week, what does being Dominique in these days look like?
Well, I'm totally focused around gamification, which is fascinating. It's my passion for maybe 10 years. And I practice it with 3 different activities. So a regular week with me will combine the 3 activities. First, I run this studio. So we have the first gamification studio in Belgium, working for our clients and developing our own products. Then I'm also a teacher. So I'm trying to teach what I learned from the practice, different schools. And I'm also a consultant. So I give private advices for managers and directors about engagement techniques and gamification. So a regular week looks like combine the 3 activities in a single day, and I switch from one to the other.
I'm curious though. You mentioned you have the studio on one hand and the consultancy on the other. What's the difference? Like what is different from one activity and the other?
The studio is really, of course, we think a lot, we analyze a lot, but we mainly produce a lot. So we code. The studio is a team of 15 people globally with developers and senior developers.
Okay.
Specialized in gamification, but we code. That's what the studio is doing. And my consulting work is more about analyzing, creating strategies around gamification for businesses. So it's different.
Interesting. So you have on one side the development side with your studio, and on the other one is, as you were saying, the consultancy. So you're actually thinking of the strategy itself, and the other one would be almost called like an implementation, right?
Yeah, correct.
Fantastic. So Dominique, we always like to start strong with these questions, and the first question is of one of those times where you had what we like to call maybe a favorite fail or a first attempt in learning with gamification. One of those times where, you were going north, things went south, whatever that looks like. We want to be there with you. We want to learn as well the lessons that you got from that. And we essentially want to be there on the ground level with you.
Yeah, sure. But the difference between gamification and gaming, I won't tell it to you, but gaming is spontaneous and you play games to have fun. And gamification is about using gaming techniques when the environment, the context is not fun at all, and you try to create engagement with those techniques. The main mistakes people working in that field are doing, and I did also that, is to believe that people will enjoy your gameplay, whatever you're creating, they will understand it and have fun with it. That's not what we're doing today, but I had to learn it after years. So we are really focused on processes. So what we do is to create gamification stuff that is improving a process. And that's much better than trying to create kind of games. Serious games with a scenario, a beginning and an end are very hard to maintain and are very inefficient in a lot of cases to create that engagement you're looking for. With a process approach, it's different. So my main failures were every time I tried to create a gamification game, I don't know how to call it, but something that looks more to a game than a process, I failed. And today our projects are, sometimes we are practicing gamification with only small elements that are hidden in a process, in an interface. And no one would call it gamification, but still it is, because we are using techniques you would find in games, but hidden in a sober interface or in very small pieces that you place at the right position.
That makes sense. And do you have any, maybe one of those war stories, right? So one of those times where, of course, if you don't want to mention the name of clients, that makes a lot of sense. We know there's NDAs and we want to protect, but is there a time where some of this happened?
Yeah, sir. Sure. 5 or 6 years ago, when we started the studio, we started with 2 or 3 different apps, and one of them was called Happy Performance. We created that with a friend, and she's a great advisor and consultant about happiness at work. She was one of the first chief happiness officers in France and Belgium, and she's a really great specialist in that field. And in my gamification courses, I'm always talking about fun play versus performance play. So when your motivation is extrinsic, you can use gamification to distract and to create engagement with the nudge effect and something distracting and create the fun for fun. And when your motivation is more intrinsic, you can start using performance play, which means transparent objectives and create that sensation of progression that you have in gamified apps like Nike Plus, Strava, Runkeeper, all those apps for sportsmen. And we made a mistake because we were in 2 different approaches. She was more in the fun play and I was more in the performance play. So we created an app that was quite a hybrid, I would say, and it didn't work. And today, I think it was my biggest failure, but that's also the moment where I learned the most about gamification.
Yes, failure brings always some very special presents as well of lessons. We just have to be open to receive them, right?
Sure.
So that was a painful time, I'm sure. And are there any would you say that there are any, I don't know, particular things that you would have, let's say you came up with almost exactly the same situation today, what would you do differently? Like, how would you approach it in a different way to avoid that failure?
What I would do is don't put yourself in the shoes of the users you don't know. When you don't know the users' behaviors, don't imagine they will reproduce your behavior in a game or what you think is a good way to don't build loops that are too complex or too long. Think about the process and cut it into small pieces. So, for example, with Happy Performance, we were trying to create an objective management app that is also very cooperative, where you can learn and help your colleagues. And we would combine both, so the performance in your work and the way you interact with the others. And we weren't too far in the scenarization of it, the fantasy of it in our minds. So we were around the table thinking how the people will behave, what they would click, etc. If you do that, don't wait a long moment before having small pieces of experience that you can test, or it's going to be too heavy. If you want to turn back, it's going to be too difficult. So if I have to change, and that's what we're doing now, and I will explain maybe in another question or process, but we start with a classical functional analysis that like you do for all softwares or processes. And then we have this human-focused design moment. And instead of having the full experience in mind, we try to focus on the touch points and the small elements and work one by one on those elements.
Sounds great. Great, lessons learned from that situation. And Dominique, let's actually take a spin on this. Let's talk about a time where things actually went well. Something that you might actually talk about, a proud moment. One of those, solutions that you created that actually went really well, and you want to talk about it. We want to be there and maybe take some of the key lessons there.
I will mention maybe 2 of them very shortly, but at the same moment that we have this failure with Happy Performance, we created Pick Me Up, which is a sales animation tool. I'm talking about 2016. And it was a direct success. So it was like the Nike Plus for the salespeople. And we really put the managers, it was for the salespeople, sales representatives, but our target was the managers and directors that wanted a tool to coordinate, animate in a real-time management with a mobile app. So with Pick Me Up, every sales you're doing in direct live, so in real time, you get the points corresponding to your actions. So everything was cut into actions. So a sale, an appointment, a successful presentation. So you can do whatever you want. It's very flexible. And you collect your points according to objectives. But you also see your average score for the week, for the month, for the quarter. You also see your record, so your best score ever. And you can, as manager, you can create challenges at every time, very flexible challenges, small races between three salesmen, or a full challenge for the full team, or you can coach individually someone with individual challenges. And I would say it was well designed. We were very proud of the design, very intuitive, very animated. So every celebration of success was an animation with cool cartoon animations. I think we put the finger on the right spots, and we reached 15,000 salesmen in Europe and also in Australia, because we signed Bacardi Australia at that moment. And we also sold it to a bank in Belgium, Belfius. It's a big bank. And they wanted us to connect the tool to the CRM, to their CRM. And because of that, we were acquired by the CRM companies. It's a European company called FEC. And they bought our app after only 11 months of use. So it was a fast exit, but it was also the good example of what we wanted to do and achieve with our studio. So we are a gamification startup studio. We want to create apps that we are selling ourselves and to make fast exits after 2 or 3 years. So we made 3 exits at this moment. And that was in 2016. And today we have a very promising app that is becoming the leader on its market. It's called Hunterz. It's a referral recruitment app, totally gamified, where we turn the employees into headhunters. So they can, in a transparent way, when they propose a candidate to a new position, and they can expect to win a reward, everything is transparent. So every progression stage of the candidates will give points if it's successful. So if you propose someone, the CV is accepted, you get 50 points, for example. Then there is an assessment, and you get 100 points if it's a success, etc., until the candidate is recruited. The point here, and that's my motto with gamification, the first thing you have to create is early celebrations of successes. And the problem with the classical referral systems is that you propose a candidate and nothing will happen until your candidate is recruited, which won't happen in 100% of the cases. So that's a failure. And if you take a look at games, they will never do that way. They will try to split the process to create levels and the feeling of progression that you can do with a recruitment process, and to have those early celebrations of success. So what I say to my clients, when you are giving 1,000 euros as a reward for a referral recruitment that is a success, and if you don't want to change the budget, let's say that you are only giving 750 euros, but keep the 250 you saved for the point system. Because with all those points, the players, the users, they can spend them in a shop where there are dedicated gifts proposed by the company. So we started with that, and today we have more than 200,000 employees connected in Europe for huge banks like Crédit Mutuel in France. We also have companies like Orange, Audemars Piguet, maybe you know the luxury watches, big groups and big companies, and they receive more CVs with more employees proposing more CVs in a more frequent basis. So those are much.
Because it's not a done once and done, right? It's not like, I propose you a CV and that's the one that's going to get hired. You actually need some volume, right? You need more people to be proposing more CVs so that you can have better chances to find the right person.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I say when I say we are attacking processes, not trying to create games. The referral recruitment process is totally gamifiable, I would say. So we took it piece by piece, every touch points of a recruitment, and we try to make it more entertaining and engaging thanks to gamification.
Sounds great. So thanks for that example, Dominique. And you've already mentioned, several examples of things that you've done, and you certainly have a lot more experience in that. So I'm guessing that when you approach, and you also teach gamification, so even more of a question for you is, when you approach a gamification project, how do you do it? Do you have some process? Do you have a series of steps? How does it work?
Yeah, maybe if you want, for your listeners, I can share my methodology and a video presentation of our method. But we start with this thing that I already mentioned, trying to understand where the motivation is in the process. So let's say you want to gamify a team around a project in a company, for example, or you want to gamify a loyalty program with your clients. That's also a very classical example. I will start with the understanding the motivation of your clients, the majority of your clients. Like if you have an emotional product, normally your motivation is more intrinsic. If you have a commodity product, normally the motivation is more extrinsic. If you know that you will have to equilibrate what I call the fun play and the performance play, which are two totally different ways to practice gamification. We start with that. Then we have this player's journey. Maybe you know the Kevin Varback player's journey with 4 stages, starting with identification, then you have the onboarding, then you have the scaffolding, and then you have the mastery. Have you heard about it?
Yes, I've heard of it. But if you want to quickly expand on that to make sure everybody is on board, that would be great.
Yeah, for all the interfaces or cases that are more marketing related, it's very useful to use Kevin Varback approach because it clearly explains that identification, when you are a marketeer, there is a trap. You almost always think that identification phase is a boring moment, not engaging, that you have to skip as quick as possible to go to the core loop of your activity, what you're proposing to your clients. Video games are doing exactly the opposite. They know that the identification phase is the first engaging moment. If you find the right way to avatarize your users, and it's not about creating a shape like a character, it's more psychological than that. If you try to make them believe in the role they will play in the activity, you get your first opportunity to create engagement. And it's a shame that marketers are missing it. And it's also an opportunity for my business because I'm always starting with that. Then you have the onboarding phase. And you know that video games are very good in managing the onboarding and create it very engaging to make sure that the players will stay in the game. There are so many techniques like the milestone unlocks or the beginner's luck or the free lunches that you find in games that are not practiced enough by marketers. So in my methodology, we also try to identify what is the period of onboarding, what does it mean in your particular case, and where can we put useful gaming techniques to create more conversion, loyalty, and engagement. Okay, and after that, I also focus on the players' profiles without paying too much attention about putting people into boxes. That's not the goal. But I like the Richard Bartle 4 families, like I think all gamification experts are practicing them. But we also developed our own matrix with 8 subcategories. And what I understood from my practice, and that's also what I'm teaching, when you take a look at the families of Richard Bartle, you have the fighters, the killers, the achievers, the explorers, and the socializers. But when you look at it, we are almost all achievers. And gamification is mostly about creating an achievement path. So you have to start with it as a first pillar. And then the other 3 families of scoring, I prefer to talk about scores than profiles. It's more useful because we want to create engagement. And when you create engagement, you want to find the right way to score a motivation. So you start with achievement, and then you put small pieces of fighting to feed the fighters, small pieces of exploration to feed the explorers, and some pieces of socialization to feed the socializers. But you can do that. It's very compatible with the achievement. I don't know if I'm clear, Rob. Tell me if I'm going nowhere.
Yeah. I think it seems to me like there's something there. I think there. You also mentioned that you maybe had a video that you wanted to share. We can definitely put that in the show notes as well if you want to explain any further. That would be great. But yeah, I think you have plenty to go on there. You have all of the profiles that you had from Bartle, that you explore them as well. And one thing that caught my attention as well is that you mentioned that, more than saying, oh, you're this or you're that, you're actually targeting to have something for most of those profiles in any case, right?
Yes, and we are not always, it depends on the context. So a pure fighter that is totally obsessed by competition can become a socializer that it's anti-competition if he's put in a team where competition is not a good thing. And the opposite is also true, and it's only one axis. So trying to make personas with people according to profiles, I think it's a wrong way to do it. You need to once again, it's about the processes. So if you're successful at creating an achievement path, normally everyone will understand and like to feel that they are making some progress in an activity. Should it be a marketing relationship or an employee in a job, anything. And after that, the 3 other ways to manage the motivation, it's not about the profile. It's about small elements where you feel like a fighter at that moment, you will try to find a ranking. If you feel like a socializer at that moment, even if you're focusing on your achievement path, you will like to interact with the others. And if you feel like an explorer, if you only have the achievement path with no surprises, no new things to do, or no new functionalities to unlock, you will feel unhappy. So it's just about completing the achievement path.
Having everything in a way, having something for everybody. And that's one of the things that I usually say as well in many of my workshops is, it's hard to find somebody who is a pure this or a pure that. We're not pure profiles in any way. Usually we are, bits and pieces of this, depending on the context, depending on the situation. You might behave more like this, or you might behave more like that. And that's fine. I mean, that's something that I would like to say that we need to take into consideration when designing, that, people might be of any of these. And especially in the cases where you don't choose who are your profiles going to be, right? Yeah. Sometimes you can, and you say, well, I'm creating something from scratch, and I'm going to choose who am I going to target this towards, right? But there's pretty often situations in which you get, again, if it's an internal employee situation, you say, well, these are the employees I got. I don't pick them, right? I'm a consultant. I don't pick who I get, right?
Totally right. And also talking about business applications, which is my main business. One thing that's very important, when it comes to your revenue, to your wage, or to your skills, what you were hired for. So like let's say you are a blockchain specialist in a big group. So you're supposed to be the best blockchain expert. If you try to introduce some fighting into your gamification, please make sure that the expert doesn't feel injured or ashamed, because the other will notice that he has flaws or things like that. So it's very touchy to practice gamification with the rankings, etc. If you are into if we're talking about the wage of the people, it's very complicated. But there are exceptions. Like my example with the sales animation platform, it works because they are used to be compared, and they are used to talk about their wages, their bonuses. It's okay. Talking about Hunterz, my referral recruitment app, we also excite them with some contests and things like that. But it's totally okay, because referral recruitment is not mandatory. It's not your core work. So you can do it or not. No one will blame you. So it's okay to be compared. The context, but within the context, inside the context itself, please make sure that you are not embarrassing people. Too much transparency in your process. And that's also the same for socialization. I think about the social bonuses that are practiced in some companies. It's never working. Google was, I think it was 4 years ago, they announced that they were giving $250 to every employee in their headquarters in California. But that bonus, that monthly bonus, was not for them. You have to give it to another employee that you think was good and deserving it. They never talked about it afterwards. I mean, they don't talk about it. I think it stopped. And I've seen that in some startups where they have this virtual currency they can use to buy sandwiches or drinks, but also they can share together, and you can give. I'm thinking about a startup called Brick in Belgium. It's a very nice startup, but they also have this system where you receive 6 bricks every morning, and you can spend them, but you can also give them to your friends. What I noticed is that it's not working after a few weeks, because friends are rewarding friends. And you can have a feeling of solitude when you are not rewarded because no one likes you. And that's the feeling you can have with those systems.
And there's something that I've heard. I think it's Yukai Chao who said it plenty of times, is that you don't want to feel dumb, or you don't want to feel stupid in the system. So, make sure that you're accounting for that unfeeling. You don't want people to feel that way. So what are you doing to avoid people feeling dumb in your system? So how are you intentionally avoiding that to happen, right?
That's an excellent question, because, when gamification is about also taking advantage of how do you say it in English, the naiveness, when you're naive at the beginning of a process, like in games. So you have this Dunning-Kruger effect that shows that humans, they feel more competent or experts at the beginning of a process, because they don't have any comparison points. So if you're starting learning chess or tennis or golf, and if your tennis teacher tells you after 1 hour, oh, your backhand is very promising, I think you're going to be a champion, you want to believe it. Like you want to believe in the freemium games when you are reaching the new levels very easily in Candy Crush or Clash Royale. So you don't feel dumb. You are dumb, actually, because you are trapped by the game, but it's okay at the beginning. But as soon as you are understanding the game, the game master has to switch to a performance play system where everything is transparent. And even if it's hard, you're not considered as a dumb person because you know what you have to do to achieve the next levels. It's always the same, like in games. When you are becoming addicted to Candy Crush, for example, it becomes harder and harder, but it's okay. You want it, actually. It's normal. But if it was getting that harder that fast in the beginning of the game, you would have left it.
Absolutely.
It's really the point. Gamification is about manipulation at the beginning and transparency in the end.
Oh, I love that phrase. Maybe manipulation at the beginning and then all about transparency towards the end.
That's what I think. But that's also what I've noticed. The manipulation lasts too long, people will notice it and they will hate you and hate the system. And if you are not practicing transparency when it's worth, like I have a gamification curve I can also share with your audience, where the mix of motivation, when you have a hybrid motivation between extrinsic and intrinsic, which is the most common case, you have to be creative and practice a full gamification with fun play, nudge effects, distraction, and manipulation. And on the other hand, try to be transparent and go to a performance play system where you know exactly what you have to do to achieve something real. But when your motivation is mostly intrinsic or totally intrinsic, which is great because there we can stop manipulating. If you don't provide to those people that are truly motivated, if you don't provide an achievement path, an achievement journey, something is missing. I heard a lot of friends that are running with Nike Plus and Strava, and they say sometimes when I forgot my phone and I'm running without my performance play system like Strava or Nike Plus, I don't feel motivated anymore. Something is missing. Where is my performance system? Where is my achievement path?
Yeah. Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. So Dominique, what would you say is, hearing these questions and sort of feeling the vibe of the podcast, who would you say is a person that you would like to listen to? A person answering these questions just like you are. Is there somebody that you would suggest that you would like to hear in Professor Game?
Wow, a lot of people. I have my favorite client for the moment is called Studytracks. It's I'll tell you the short story. So George, the founder of Studytracks, is a music producer in London, and he was the producer of Salt and Pepper and Desiree. Maybe you know those bands.
I haven't heard of them, but probably somebody in the audience has.
Yeah, they're famous in the 90s, and Salt and Pepper, they have a hit called Push It. Well, whatever. And George has a teenage boy, and his teenage son is not studying a lot. So one day, George is pissed off, so pardon my French. He takes his biology book and he writes a rap song with the biology book. And it becomes viral on YouTube, and it becomes Studytracks. So it's a startup where artists can create songs to make the children and the teenagers learn history, mathematics, biology with rap songs. So they are quite successful in UK and France. So they signed the Ministry of Education in those two countries. And so, for example, in France, you have artists, maybe you don't know them, but very famous artists like Yannick Noah, Big Flo and Oli, Joey Star, that are writing exclusive songs for Studytracks. So you can download the app and listen to those songs to learn some mathematical concepts, for example. And also we are working with them. So we create the app, the software, the backend, we manage everything. And we also have small games. So when you listen to a song, you can have a finish the lyrics exercise, for example, where you have holes and you have to find the right words. So it's a way to learn with fun. And it's also a nudge effect into action because you don't realize that you're learning that fast. You're into the game. And the teachers, they can create specific programs for their pupils and say, okay, for next week, you have to learn that song and that song and that song. And they will understand the matter. So I think those guys are doing a very great job. They have a very good approach of how they can use gamification to make learning more efficient. So maybe that would be a good podcast for you. I don't know if that's kind of... That's
Sounds very interesting.
Okay, so I can connect you to them. And
Yeah, sounds great. I'd actually be looking forward to that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And talking about recommendations, Dominique, thinking of this audience of people who are interested in, creating gamification in this or that way, is there any book that you would recommend for this audience to read? And of course, tell us why it would be that book, and if there's anything else you can say.
I would say I think I'm also teaching cognitive biases. I think marketing is mostly psychology, and gamification is fully a psychology thing. So you have to understand how people are behaving and acting. So I would recommend a book that is called Super Intelligence from Nick Bostrom. You know that book?
I have not heard of it ever, but sounds very interesting.
Super Intelligence
is it about?
It explains the 5 different ways a super intelligence will emerge in the next maybe 50 years. And it can come from different techniques. So will it be a computer trying to becoming more intelligent than humans? Will it be a change in our brains? Well, it's very fascinating. So it's more about transhumanism. But inside this book, you have a lot of things that are related to gamification, how people are behaving and acting and thinking. So I know it's a bit out of the box. So it's not a gamification book at all. But for
that's fantastic.
It adds something very valuable, I think.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for that. And you've discussed a couple of sort of superpowers that other people have and great work that they are doing. How about you? What would you say is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people?
Whoa, it's complicated to say. I think when we have a meeting about gamification strategy, I think it's genuine in me. When I was a student, when I was 16, I was organizing messaging parties in nightclubs. So it was before the smartphones. And those were parties for shy people. You had a number on your chest, and you had hostesses sharing the messages. So you can write a message to someone, and you have an hostess bringing the message. And we had on the top of the dancing floor, we displayed the most funny messages and the most popular persons, etc. So it was a totally gamified party.
I had never heard of that. That's so interesting.
Messaging parties at that moment. And it was working well. I almost didn't do any studies afterwards because I was earning a decent money at that moment. So I think gamification is in me from the very beginning. I always practiced it in my different jobs and positions. So maybe that's my special power.
Sounds great. Well done, Dominique. So talking about those things, and this might be one of the difficult questions, one of the hard ones. We were discussing at the start, like, this is not a test. You'll know the answer to your questions, but this one you might have to think about a little more. I don't know. It's up to you. What would you say is your favorite game?
Oh, it's quite easy. My favorite game is Civilization. One of the reasons this one is my favorite, it's a bit shameful because it's a turn-by-turn game. So I don't play first-person shooters, for example, because it's too fast for me. I'm very bad at it. So with those strategy games where you can take a coffee and think about the next move, I'm better, and I like it. And Civilization is quite complex and complete. If you take the version 5 or 6, the algorithm is very cool. I mean, I like those games where there are billions ways to win or to fail. And the other one is Clash Royale. I would say that I became addicted to Clash Royale. It's because I started to seriously, I started to play Clash Royale to explain better to my students how the milestone unlocks are working in games, because Clash Royale is a must. And then I became addicted to myself. So I play maybe 4 times a day to Clash Royale.
Well, I have to say I'm not playing Clash Royale, but I'm playing Clash of Clans a bit too much. My wife can bear testimony to this. Good stuff. So, Dominique, is there anything else you want to share with the audience? Any final words, any piece of advice, whatever you want to go for? And of course, let us know where we can find out more about you, about your work, OPP, consultancy, whatever that's
what I like to share I'm totally fascinated about the metaverse. We all see that the metaverses are coming, maybe in 5 or 10 years, or maybe 2 months. We don't know. And I would just like to share or to ask your audience to Zuckerberg told that Facebook will become the first metaverse in next month, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe it. Or maybe you will have to buy a gaming company. I think metaverses the first successes of metaverses will come from games. Like, Fortnite is already a metaverse. So I just want to share here officially that I'm not betting any euro on Facebook on it. I think I believe that Epic Games or Blizzard or the others are much more well positioned to succeed in that field.
Interesting. To be honest, the metaverse is something that gets me very, very curious. Mm-hmm. But it is not something I've been researching too much. I have to confess that. Same happened to me with VR. I have enjoyed some VR games, but that's as far as it goes. I was trying to look into potential applications in VR in my past job. We didn't find too much. We found one or two potential applications. Of course, it was for a business school, so it was pretty specific. Yeah. It was harder to find for that. But with the metaverse, I don't know. As you were saying, like maybe if we call Fortnite part of the metaverse, which I would agree it is, there I'm kind of more into it. I've played Fortnite a few times as well. But I don't know. I don't know if the whole concept of the metaverse and all these things, it's not as calling to me as some other things, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see.
I think for all gamification experts or people that are interested into gamification, it's you have to take a look at it. I mean, it's coming, and it will have an impact on what we're doing, of course. So just talking about Fortnite, when you see the art exhibitions or the concerts, or also the product placements into the game, and the real world is entering this successful game. I'm just only talking about Fortnite, but all the others are also starting it. So it opens a totally new world of projects and of innovations for gamification professionals.
Absolutely. That I couldn't agree more with. Absolutely. So, Dominique, thank you very much for participating in the podcast. Thank you for taking some time off your very busy schedule, I'm sure, to share some of your lessons, your knowledge, your experience. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And if you want more interviews with incredible guests like Dominique, please go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started onto our email list for free. That way we can be in contact. You'll have my email and you will be the first to know of the opportunities that we might have for you. And remember, before you go on to your next mission, remember to subscribe or follow, whatever that looks like, in your podcast app, in your favorite podcasting app, which is totally for free. And listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.